Hi, I'm Brandon Garrel, sitting down with Paul Richards, and we're going to talk about Paul's experience as a leader, his background as a business owner, his experience in sales. We're going to talk about effective leadership styles that Paul brings to the table, how to recognize the talent on your team, cultivate that talent on your team, accountability measures. What are some effective ways to determine whether coaching is necessary versus discipline? And Paul will also discuss his small businesses that he started in the past. Very excited to learn more about that. And also, Paul has decided to continue his education. So I'm very intrigued as to what made him decide to take that step and return to school to continue his education. So, Paul, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you, Brandon. So again, my name's Paul Richards. I'm a couple decades of experience in business. I've started four of my own small businesses. I've worked for some large academic institutions. I've worked for other organizations in between. I've learned to be a leader and lead people really, by the seat of my pants in some respects. But, you know, I've lived all over the country. That's one thing that a lot of people don't know about me. I was, born in the Midwest. I've lived in Montana, California, Illinois. I was in Saudi Arabia. I was in Massachusetts, Florida, North Carolina, and Texas briefly, and Maine for that matter, and Washington State. I can't even remember anymore. As a result of all that moving around, I kind of had to learn to get along with people. And that translated later in life into a pretty successful sales career, and then the ability to kind of manage people and to learn how to manage people and to understand people and their motivations. I'm definitely the kind of leader that strives to create trust and to create a safe environment for their folks. And the reason for that is you can't have constructive discord without some kind of trust and safety. And by discord, I mean, you want your people to disagree, be it a job function issue, be it change management, you name it, where the stressors come from in work. I've learned over the last 20 years to really find ways to kind of work through that, to create buy-in, to create engagement. The biggest compliment that I've ever gotten is when somebody that worked for me grows up and grows out and goes on to bigger and better things. To me, that's the sign of a successful leader. I've been able to do that quite a bit in my career. It's something that I'm very proud of.
That's awesome, Paul. So question for you, how do you actually get that buy-in from someone that reports to you? How do you put them in the best position to, as you put it, grow up and grow out?
Great question. The way you get buy-in from anybody, first of all, you have to establish a relationship. And to establish that relationship, I mean, I've worked for people that their mode is really to put their thumb on you. You'll do what I say. I'm the one that's always right. I push the agenda. Feel free to give me an idea or two, but realize that even if you do, I'm going to take ownership of that. So one of the things that I've always tried to do is always give credit to the people that come up with the idea. And even if it's not always 100% on them, it still benefits you always to let the staff feel like you've given them that recognition. That's how you start to build those relationships. The other thing, I subscribe to a servant leader philosophy. So when the typical corporate structure is the tree hanging down, right? Top to bottom.
Interesting.
I feel the opposite. I feel like it's like this. I'm holding you up. The whole idea is, and you create an environment of trust by doing what you say you're going to do, holding people accountable fairly for the things that you are expected of them. Somebody said to me a long time ago that when you point a finger at somebody, there's three fingers pointing back at you.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It is. It's something I think that when you treat people with respect, when you listen, when you give people credit for their ideas, and you don't just ram change down somebody's throat. You
Right.
know, you engage with them, you explain why something is necessary. Now, obviously, there's different flavors of this, and you know, depending on the situation, what you're trying to do, you can't always get that level of buy-in. But you always have to strive for that. You always have to take that time and work with your people and have them feel like, you know, you've got their back, that you're supporting them, that you're there to make sure that they can do their job the best as possible. And you want to understand where they want to go.
This is one question I've asked a lot of leaders. How do you know when it's appropriate to discipline versus coach?
Yeah, great question. And that's always a challenge. So there's a couple of things. What I'll always say to people, one of my kind of go-to things is, you know, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, every day. I probably misspoke a couple of times just in this brief interview that we've had.
Same with me and my technology.
Yeah. You know, it happens. But what I always say to people is you're entitled to make mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. What you can't do is continue to make the same mistakes over and over. So I'm pretty good at documenting and keeping track of these kinds of things, again, in as transparent a way as you can, respectable transparency, appropriate transparency.
Right.
But what I'll do is, you know, we all understand how much it costs to bring in an employee and to train an employee. It's astronomical. It's just this huge component of cost, and the loss is giant. So if we make the investment and have someone on our team, you can bet I'm going to do everything that I can do to make sure that person is successful. It doesn't always work. And so I think those situations where, you know, you've addressed an issue and it continues to come back up, then you have to take some of the more formal steps. And you always try to be supportive in those environments, but there definitely, you know, there are some people just aren't right for the organization. You know, you can try to put them into a different part and see if they fit. Right. Like you illustrated earlier, looking at people's strengths and seeing what works. Maybe there's a better spot. Sometimes there isn't. I've had to let people go. It's never fun. But you know, for the health of the organization and the health of the team, sometimes it's necessary.
It's kind of that when I started working in the staffing industry, one of the terms that I'm certain you've heard of that always sticks with me: square peg, round hole. There's just no way to make it fit sometimes, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And you can't be a standard. You can't knock the corners off. Doesn't work.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.